Hi, Darshit. Thank you so much for taking out time for this interview. For the viewers, may we request you to please share your journey, your story in your own words?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Darshit, and I went through the MBA program back in 2015. And I'll give you a little bit of context why I chose MBA. So I was very passionate about computers because growing up, computers was a new thing for me. So I told my dad that I would like to get into software engineering someday, and he kindly agreed at that point. And that's how I got into software engineering. And then I got my first job as a software engineer. But then I realized that what I was doing was only bug fixing or maintaining the code. So technical viewers might understand this better, that it is no fun. So I decided to look for other opportunities where I got a chance to build out new features, new products. And that was really fun. And that was the time when I first met a title or a role called product manager. And that was my first time interacting with a product manager. And I was really excited to work with him. I learned a lot from him, and that's when my interest in product management grew. And that was like the pivotal point when I decided, okay, I need to have some business skills if I want to be a product manager because you have to think holistically, not just the technical part of the product. And that's why I decided to get my MBA. And fortunately, I was able to get a good admit, uh, work through the application process. Finally, I ended up in the MBA program and finally graduated. And since then, I have been working as a product manager. So that's been my journey so far.
Oh, that's quite interesting that you were able to achieve what you had in mind and, yeah, successfully reach your goals.
Yeah, I did not plan it that way. Like in the hindsight, I would have planned it, but I did not plan it, and it just things fell into places.
Okay, that's even better then.
Yeah,
It all worked
I
out
got
well for
lucky.
you, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, with what area on the GMAT did you struggle the most, and how did you overcome that challenge back then?
Oh boy. A little bit of backstory. I actually wanted to come to or wanted to even like get an MBA sooner. So I started preparing for CAT. CAT in India is really, really competitive. So, but yes, there are brightest minds in India, so they would be able to get through it. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of them. But that's when my preparation and thinking about GMAT also started. Like, okay, I can try for CAT, but I can also simultaneously start for GMAT. And I took GMAT just after preparing for CAT, right? So I thought like, okay, I have enough information. There are similarities between the exam. And then when I appeared for it, I think I got a score of 570. And that's when the reality struck me. And I thought like, okay, I'm probably weak in all the areas. So I need to focus more. And then I started studying for it. And then as I went through that preparation, verbal was the one I mostly struggled with. And to overcome that, like when I started taking the GMAT verbal part, it felt really difficult for me. And I had to get a lot of basics right? Like a proper preposition, adjectives, and basic grammar, right? So what I did is I remember at that point, I borrowed Wren and Martin, the English textbook that is usually used in schools from one of my friends and because he was preparing for it as well. So I used that. I literally read through that entire textbook just to get the basics clear, and then I started preparing for the verbal. And then mostly it was about taking more practice tests to just improve upon the sections that you were weak on.
Yes, that is true. And I think your practice that really helps, practicing mock tests and
Yes,
doing the analysis.
absolutely,
That's
absolutely.
very important. So, how was your entire experience of applying to these schools? And what are a few things you believe you did correctly in successfully achieving the admit?
So I think one of the things that I did really well was planning, right? So when I started preparing for GMAT, uh, I engaged in every conversation very early, right? Like, okay, what happens if I get the admit? What if I don't get the admit, right? So I started planning out all those possibilities, and then also the next steps after those possibilities happen, right? So that was like a cohesive plan that I created. I also maintain an Excel sheet. I still have it somewhere, which tracked every single application, their website, their URL, my login ID, my password, and also I believe that all the applications deadline, like you know how you have round one deadline, round two deadline. I had all this planned out, and I also had target dates against it. Like when would I complete my packet for this particular school? So make sure I work backwards from that date. And that really worked out really well because it just kept pushing me like, okay, I have a deadline coming. I need to prepare for these. I need to get the essays ready and everything and transcripts and everything. So the planning was really, really important. And other than that, yes, a lot and lot of practice. Like even now, I feel looking back about it, I feel I would have had if I would have had gotten more practice, I would have probably ended up with a higher score and eventually get a better score as well. But yeah, practice was the one, and then planning out to every single detail how you're going to apply for those applications. Again, Shailesh really helped me with all of that. His emails were very concise and to the point and summarizing what I need to do once I go through the application process.
Right. So, with what area on the application process did you struggle the most, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Yeah. So I think usually, so this is the approach I took, and it might vary for other people. I used to have one set of essays, which are like my base essays, right? Like I know, okay, these are the things I absolutely want to tell the school that I'm applying for. But then every MBA course you apply to through different schools, like let's say for example the 7 schools I applied, they have some or the other component different, right? Their learning outcomes might be a little different. So learning outcomes are like what the school tells you that you will learn out of the MBA program. So if you read through the fine prints of the MBA's curriculum of the school, you would see like what learning outcomes they're targeting. So the learning outcomes are really essential, and also they need to tie to your essay somehow, right? Like, okay, you are trying to get work towards these learning outcomes, and you have shown that you can have these learning outcomes in the future. So those learning outcomes were different for a lot of schools, right? So the hard part for me was to tailor the essays that are specific to the learning outcomes of the school. And the way I did it is I read through all the learning outcomes that every school had, and I made changes to that learning outcomes area or the part of the essay that I had, and I made sure that it exactly matches what the school is looking for, right? So, and I think that kind of helped me just get the top 5 priority schools that I had in mind, and that's how I reduced the number of applications as well. So I think those things really help me is going through the fine prints of the curriculum, what the school is looking for. Because if you do like eventually if you want to get into that school, you would have to do it because let's say you were shortlisted for an interview, you need to be thorough with what their program is about, right? You need to understand what their offering is and what they're trying to teach you. So it eventually would have helped me as well.
Right, absolutely. And yeah, it's
Yeah,
very important to do research on your target schools.
absolutely, absolutely. Research, yeah. I remember doing at least a year's worth of research before even thinking about which schools I want to go to, thinking about the rankings and stuff. So there was like a lot of research. So as soon as you think that you want to get an MBA, plan as early as possible.
It's very important. So you applied to 10 B schools. So how did you
Mhm.
manage the application timelines? What were your learnings from that?
Yeah. So the way I approached all those 10 schools initially was I targeted the first five that I wanted to get into, right? So my strategy was like, okay, let's get into the round one of all these top five. Because if I am not able to go through that, I need to start thinking about the alternate schools that I had in mind. So I made sure that I hit the first round deadline, and typically, at least when they open the applications, I'll start thinking about when should I submit my application to. So I prioritized that, and then I prioritized the alternate schools. So I kept the essays ready, and I made sure that in case this result does not come in time, I am already applying for the alternate schools. So fortunately, the first 3 or 4 schools that I applied to, I got the results for them before I started applying to the alternate schools, right? So even though I did apply for the alternate schools, because sometimes it helps if you say like, okay, it might help you get a more scholarship or a higher scholarship than they are offering, because you can say like, okay, I have got admits from multiple schools. Is there something that you can offer me so that I can join your school instead of that school? So that was my strategy as well. But yeah, I prioritized the ones that I wanted to go and then the alternate ones. But that was kind of not needed once I started getting admits.
All right, okay. So would you like to share your interview experience with the B schools?
Yeah, so I think I had 2 interviews. The rest 3 schools, they did not have the interview process, but their application process was very thorough. They had requested work samples, if I'm not wrong. But 2 interviews that I had, one was with UConn, University of Connecticut, and that was very behavioral and experience based, right? So they would like try to dig more into uh, why you want to get an MBA. How would this school's MBA help you get to your goals faster or even sooner? And the other interview with, I think it was RIT. They had interviews at that point. I think they've removed them now. But RITs was again similar, and they were really probing into their curriculum and how their curriculum fits through my essays, and then how would my essays tie back to the goals that I want, right? So going back to that conversation about learning outcomes and reading through it, that really helped me in the interviews, because they can ask you probably anything from their website, because at the end of the day they are also trying to gauge your interest in the school, not just they are interested in you just because you applied.
That is true.
One of them, I believe UConn had a case study where they present like a very hypothetical and also like a made up business scenario, and then what they're looking for is basically your understanding of working through how would you solve that problem, right? So they just want to understand your thinking process. In my opinion, they don't really care what your final answer is. The whole goal is to make sure they understand how you are going to structurally and progressively address this problem, and at the end of the solution discussion, they want you to make a recommendation, right? So, okay, let's say, okay, should Google make EV cars, right? So you just help them understand why or why they should not make EV cars, and at the end, have an opinion like, okay, these are the reasons I think Google should make EV cars. So that is the kind of approach I took, and I think there was one case study question for UConn. Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
as I said, it
Yes.
was 9 years ago, so I
Yes.
don't remember the fine prints of it.
No problem at all. So, would you
Yeah,
like to tell us about your MBA experience?
yeah. So my MBA experience was, I think it was better than I had expected. First, I thought I would just enroll in the 2-year program, get an MBA, and then start looking for jobs. But along the way, I found really interesting micro programs, I would say. One of them was Toastmasters. It was not part of my curriculum, but Toastmasters is really great. And this is a great advice for anybody who is trying to think about getting an MBA here. Like Toastmasters is something that would help you practice your presentation and communication skills, right? And if someone has stage fear or are shy to speak in public, Toastmasters would really help you get rid of that fear. So I joined the Toastmasters program at my university in the first semester, and that helped me develop a lot of communication skills, public speaking skills, and also how to effectively communicate and get your ideas across the table, right? So that really helped me. And as an international student, if you're in the US, the first a little bit of doubt that a company might have is about your communication, right? Because English might not be your first language. So having Toastmasters would really help you, or at least help you stand out if the other candidate is exactly the same experience as you. So you could make a difference there. The second thing that was really interesting in my program was the VCIC program, which is Venture Capitalist Investment Competition. That uh, so that was like a competition first among the school, and then I was one of the 5 team members who the school sent to participate across the country for this particular competition, and it was around how you can think as a venture capital, and they would have somewhat real world business ideas, some real founders coming in and pitching their early ideas to you, and then you have to make a decision whether you will be investing in their fund or investing in their idea or not, and you have to go through that exact VC process. So that kind of opened up a lot of opportunities for me post graduation, and having that contact and networking opportunities that led me to like more interviews once I was getting towards the graduation. So these two were like a little bit of different from the program that I had planned. But other than other than this, the regular curriculum was pretty straightforward in my mind. Like if you have done a bachelor's program in India, and if you have a good amount of work experience, 4 to 5 years, it shouldn't be a problem. The certain courses were a little bit challenging, but they were also interesting at the point. One thing I really found out helpful was the professors are there to help you, not to grill you or fail you, right? So they are also looking for students who are willing to learn rather than just sitting on the back bench. I know it sounds cliche, but it is really, I felt the first time I felt really nice to sit on the front rows of the classroom, because the discussions, the presentations, and also the topics were really, really interesting to talk about and also listen to. So I think that my MBA experience was literally better than I had expected. And I was in San Diego, so people who are aware of San Diego is a beautiful city, lots to explore, lots to roam around, lots of places to see. So it kind of made that experience even better for me.
Oh, it was quite a wholesome experience.
It was a really good experience. Yes.
That's great. So, what would you like to say about your job search experience during the MBA, and what kind of advice would you like to give to the future candidates regarding that?
Yeah, so job search is kind of a little bit of tricky area, and it depends a lot on your school's ability to network with the employers, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, San Diego State, they are very good partners with Qualcomm, which is one of the biggest employers in San Diego, and they have HP as also one of the other partners, right? So what happens is if you are like big employers that you might want to work for, partners with the universities, they would come to the career fair from the university for the universities that they are hosting, and they would try to recruit as many candidates as possible, right? So that really helps. But in my case, I was not willing. Like they were not in my short list of employers to work for, and I was looking for different employers because their background was mostly hardware and electronics, and mine was more on software engineering. So I was looking for something else at that point. Uh, so I had to go through my application process separately, right? The career fair was there. I did apply to a few of the positions there, but it did not align with my end goal. So what I did is the career counselors or the career services team at universities are usually there to help you as well. You just have to be proactive. They wouldn't come to you and say like, okay, let me just take care of your resume. I'll make it myself, right? You have to go to them. You have to showcase that you are willing to improve on your resume and stuff. So that I did with the career counselor there. I made sure my resume goes through ATS correctly, scans the right skills and stuff, and then the most important tool I used to apply for jobs was LinkedIn. Again, that might be common in India as well at the moment, but LinkedIn was the one that was just opening up a lot of opportunities in terms of the filters that I could use. Like, okay, if I could filter on my number of years of experience and then entry level or maybe graduate level positions, or sometimes LinkedIn also had a filter for fresh candidates out of school. So those were the things that I used to help myself. And also, I also interned with one of the companies in San Francisco. So I reached out to my manager at that point and also my manager's colleagues at that point in case they are also willing to put in a good word for me. And eventually, when I ended getting a job upon graduation, they reached out to those intern employers to talk about my background and how I performed during the internship. So maintaining that relationship was also really important. So yeah, again, one tip: if you intern during your MBA program, make sure you stay in touch, regardless of whether you get the job full time or not. Just keep in touch with your manager, ask about the progress of the projects that you took during your internship and see where they are now. So that also shows, or again, puts you in good books of those managers. And in case if they have something coming up, they might be able to easily remember you.
Right. Okay. So, how has your post MBA journey been so far, and how do you think the entire pre application phase and your MBA helped you in your post MBA journey?
Yeah. So post MBA journey is really good. I have been through a lot of companies, 4 companies in the last 5 years. So little bit unusual, but there are like valid reasons, at least in my mind, that I had to look for other opportunities. But thinking about the pre-application process, so again, I was just thinking back to the goal that I want to be, right? Like I went to the MBA program because I want to be a product manager. So having that technical background and software engineering background, that really helps me day to day in my job, right? Because as a product manager, you have to think about the next product you build or your feature you build, and your main job is also to interact with the engineers day to day, right? So having the technical background, you could at least have a better conversation with the engineers and also understand their viewpoint, right? So that helped me pre-application and post-application. I am in a good place at the moment, and I really enjoy what I'm doing. So it again worked out for me.
All's well that ends well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, what are a few common mistakes that you would advise all the MBA applicants to avoid?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, and this is again like an advice if I were to give to my younger self, is think why 5 times why you want to get an MBA, right? Because what I see in the future, like MBA as a degree might not really stand out so much, and your skills would help you stand out, right? So if you are getting an MBA program, think absolutely how would MBA help you, and not other things might help you get to where you want to be, right? So not just start thinking that you want to go to the US or whatever country that you have in your mind. Just think very critically of yourself why you want to get an MBA, and then start for the GMAT preparation. In terms of preparation, again, as I said, like plan things well in advance. I took a GMAT exam, as I mentioned earlier, a year before even I wanted to get to the actual GMAT exam, right? So that gives you a very good perspective of what the GMAT exam is. And I know there are a lot of mock practices tests out there, but the actual GMAT environment is a little bit different. It's a little bit more daunting and more challenging than you think it is. So make sure that you go through that experience once before you even take the actual GMAT, because you never know if you want to improve your score, you should have enough time. And also about applying as early as possible, right? So make sure you have enough time on your hand. Like if, let's say, I hope everything goes well for everybody, but let's say if something were to go south, if something unforeseen were to happen, you have enough time to improve upon that situation, right? So planning very well in advance would help you get there. So in my case, again, I had a very low score, like 570 the first time I took a GMAT, but then I had a year worth of time to prepare and really address the points that I was lacking at that point. So I think these things I would definitely advise my younger self.
I think these are a few great suggestions that you have shared.
Absolutely. I'm really happy to help.
Yeah. So, what would be your final message to all the viewers watching this video?
I want to stress on the fact that ask why 5 times before getting an MBA, right? Like that is the most important thing. Like looking back, if I were to get an MBA right now, I would have thought of some alternate options. Like if you are aware, product management has become like its own course now, right? So instead of getting an MBA, understanding the all of businesses and some of the courses that I did not have to worry about, I would have thought about a micro course rather than getting a master's degree. Like MBA is, again, don't get me wrong, it is a very prestigious degree, at least if you get it from the for top 10 or top 20 schools. So nothing against them, but it again depends on where you want to go after you get an MBA, right? It's not just for the sake of getting an MBA on the degree. So I think the most critical advice is like think through and justify to yourself that you want to get an MBA, and after you get an MBA, this is what your plan is, and that is why, and that is how your plan aligns to getting an MBA in order to achieve it. So yeah, I would definitely would have advised myself as well. But yeah, this is literally a takeaway advice from this conversation.
Right. I think it's a great advice, and I'm sure all your suggestions they'll be very helpful. And we're grateful to you for taking our time for this interview.
No problem at all.
It's been great talking to you and also knowing about your experiences.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help. In case there are any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'll try my best to respond as soon as possible.
Sure, definitely. Yeah, this was great. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
No problem, Dikshita. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. Take
Yep.
care. Stay safe.
Yep. Yes, you too.
Bye.
Bye.